Most companies selling into multiple industries make one critical mistake. They don't know what to experiment with next. So what ideally happens is that they keep targeting the same ICP, reuse the same messaging, and outbound slowly stops working. Now imagine you're a fintech marketplace offering lending products. You have cracked BFSI as a sector, but now you're asking, should we go after gaming apps? What about e-commerce? And who do we even target over there? Should we target the growth teams, the product teams, or the founders themselves? This is exactly where most GTM or partnerships team get stuck. So if you are someone who's dealing with outbound GTM strategy or scaling pipeline across segments, hit the subscribe button now, because this is exactly what we break down here. And in this video, I'll show you how we are using Claude Skill to design an agent that does GTM experiments for you. Now moving into it. The idea over here was very simple when we were creating this prompt as well. Is one that outbound shouldn't be random, it is something that should be testable. So instead of asking Claude to give us ideas on it, what we did is we structured it like a GTM experiment designer. And we forced it to think in 3 layers. One is hypothesis driven thinking, that is what exactly are we testing and why. Second is segment clarity, that is who exactly are we going to target. And lastly, execution and metrics, that would include how do we run this like an experiment and not a campaign, so that we are able to get some success metrics to expand on it. So this particular prompt that we had was structured to give us 9 output points that include a clear hypothesis, a defined target segment, what all variables are being tested, even getting what are the different messaging angles that we can take, the execution plan, and most importantly, the success metrics. So basically, we turned this particular prompt in this Claude skill into a mini growth strategist for outbound. So if you can see over here, we have our skill that is created, and we start with collecting the inputs, and then it starts with generating that experiment document, which would include all the 9 aspects that we have covered earlier. It even covers risks and failure points, so that we are very well aware that okay, this might be something that might come in early. For example, for a client of ours, when we were doing an experiment, what we saw is that initial traction as per the industry, so we targeted CXOs and we had approached functional heads to pitch about the product. Turned out for a 2-week campaign, we weren't getting that many responses. Then what we did is we switched to targeting founders in those same companies, and our response rate increased significantly. So what it highlights over here is that there might be early failures, but you should try this as a backup. So it gives us a follow-up experiment as well. And finally, it gives us that complete output in a Word document. So what we have done over here is we have also conducted one test wherein we have given this particular skill an example of a fintech company. So as you can see over here, the first thing when we call the skill, what it does is it asks us for inputs. That includes product or service description, the target market, the complete ICP and buyer persona. Currently, in terms of our GTM motion, what are we doing? So it understands that and gives us a complete output according to that as well. It even understands the constraints. So if you see over here, constraints in terms of how big our team size is, what are the available tools, if we have any specific budget in mind for this particular experiment or not, and what is the timeline that we are seeing. So based on all of these parameters, it's able to think and give us a complete output. What I've done over here is that earlier when I mentioned that we are taking a use case of a fintech company that is offering lending products, right? So that is what I've mentioned in the product and service description. In terms of the target market, yes, fintech BFSI are those that we have cracked or those that understand this. But what are the additional sort of companies that we would want to target? I've mentioned that as a target market. ICP, so we have clearly defined that entire ICP with the key designations, the size of companies to target, the key industries and the key locations that we would want to target, and I have given a screenshot of that over here for it to analyze and understand. In terms of current GTM motion, I have mentioned that we are doing outreach through all 4 modes of communication, that includes mails, LinkedIn, WhatsApp and calls. And finally, in terms of the goal of the experiment, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to test out new segments and increase our meeting funnel. Finally, what it has done is it has completed that entire drafting wherein it starts with setting the objective. It starts with creating the hypothesis. Now for the hypothesis, instead of giving a vague idea, what it has done, it is structured like this, that say if we target this and position like this, then we should get this as a success matrix, because these teams care about these metrics. So if you see, the difference over here is that it's not just an outreach anymore, it's a behavior driven logic that we are putting in place. Then it defines the target segment very clearly. So earlier when we gave it a complete broader overview that this is our ICP, what it categorized into is target a specific company size. Focus on just 2 industries first as part of this experiment, and it has even given us the trigger signals as to what can those recent triggers be. It has defined that what should be a primary and secondary persona. And at the same time, it has given us different variables as well. Let's say, for example, if you are considering the target segment as BFSI and fintech, then the variation, that's the new approach that you have, is to target gaming apps and e-commerce companies. How was the messaging angle for the current approach versus for the new variant that we are creating? So it has given us that bifurcation as well. Next, in terms of the messaging strategy, if you see, there are 2 things it has divided into. One is control and second is variation. So it is telling us that what we are good at, we have complete control over. So we keep doing that thing, but with better efficiency. And variation is where we are experimenting with new segments to eventually get an increased funnel. So that is what we are trying to do over here. Along with that, it has given me a complete execution plan. That step by step, what do I need to do, right from say building my prospect list to validating all the profiles that I'm finding, then creating an email sequence for it, and then doing the outreach. So if you can say, okay, nowhere it is just directly telling that these are the email draft, just send it to these prospects. It's giving us a structured approach that this is step 1, 2, 3, 4 that you need to follow. Finally, it has given us a success matrix that primary, what is your goal, is to increase the meeting booking rate. So that's wherein it has defined that we should have more than 3% of contacted to meeting ratio. That is 3 out of every 100 meetings should come in. Then in terms of reply rate, that say for example, if my reply rate is at 2%, 3% right now, we would want to increase that to 8%. It has even defined secondary and guardrail metrics, which tells us that say for example, if people are marking our email or our WhatsApp messages as spam, then how much should we restrict that? So the opt-out rate should be less than 2%. If it is more than that, then understand one thing, that this audience is not the right fit. And finally, it has even told us that what is the learnings that we can gain out of this if this experiment succeeds or if this fails. So it has given us those possibilities as well. And finally, in terms of risks, it has defined that, okay, what can be the execution or the data risk that you might come across. Say if you have a low quality prospect list, then that over there itself is an issue. And it has told that how you can mitigate it. It has given us the follow-up experiments, as I mentioned earlier. And finally, we have a document also in place. So if you can see, one, we are able to get everything that we would want to design a GTM experiment, and in a structured document format as well, as you can see over here. Now this particular document I can use to, one, give to my sales team or my management, or explain the idea that, okay, why do we need to target this particular segment, or why do we need to experiment with this particular industry or not. And the biggest shift here is that while most teams directly start with running campaigns, what we are doing over here is we are running experiments. And that's where we are able to differentiate in terms of bringing a more predictable approach. So if you want, I can break this down and turn this into a full GTM system where signal trigger experiments automatically. And if you found this useful, then please do like and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what are your thoughts. See you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching this one.